Okay, here we go. How to use air to clean out your lines efficiently and safely. So today we're going to focus on the Milwaukee compressor. If you're using the air from the truck, things will be a little bit different, only because you have more capacity, more volume, more potential to quote-unquote do damage using the truck off of the or the air off the truck. So with a Milwaukee compressor, make sure you got a fresh battery. If you bring a second battery, that's a good thing too. One battery gives you about 10 to 15 minutes of runtime on the compressor. Having a second battery just gives you that option. If you have issues blowing out and you have to do a reboot, you've got some extra charge so you don't run out of compressor. So Milwaukee compressor, short airline. Always, always, always make sure you have the Chicago fitting to 1/4 inch airline adapter piece. Make sure you have this for your blowout cap. If you don't, you're dead in the water. So be sure to have that piece. Blowout cap with a working air pressure gauge. Blowout cap with a vent port spaced appropriately such that if the sponge were to get pushed back, which can happen, the air can at times sneak past the sponge and push it the opposite direction. You're not going to be able to bleed your air off from this port because the sponge is blocking it. That's why you have your secondary relief port right here. So you can use that to bleed off the air. Sometimes it's just a matter of when you put the cap on, between the time you put the cap on and the ball in until the time you put the air pressure to, or apply the air pressure, the concrete can also come back and just push that sponge back. So always, always, always. Do a little demo here. Try to do this with no hands. I'll just do it without a rubber here, just for illustrative purposes. Even when you have bled the air off, or believe you've bled the air off, whenever you release this clamp, if the rubber is in place, which it should be obviously, just pull the rubber back a bit, and any air that could be trapped in there can still bleed out through that small gap with the rubber in place, something like that. So that's a good habit as well. Also, before you remove the blow cap, always open both air ports fully. Do your absolute due diligence to make sure that air pressure has been relieved from the system, because this thing can literally turn into a missile if you start busting clamps and there's still air pressure in the hose. So what you're going to do is, because this is a 2-inch blowout cap, that's a 2.5-inch line. That's why I have the reducer. When we go to blow out here, we're going to put this reducer on in the opposite direction how we would normally use it. Put the 2.5-inch sponge right in here, or in the start of the hose is actually probably even better. Put it on the hose side. We start out with the air. We're not going to exceed 50 pounds of pressure. With a regular concrete mix and anything 300 feet of hose or less, 50 pounds of pressure will and should get that concrete moving. If you're pushing shotcrete, like a dry, stiff shotcrete through lines, you may have to go higher. Don't ever, 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 ever exceed 80 pounds of air to start things moving off. But for the vast majority of times you're going to do this, just use 50 as a rule. Try to keep it to 50. We'll put 50 pounds to this. That'll get the sponge moving. With a small compressor, it produces air at such a slow rate, it might not even build to 50 pounds before that sponge starts to move. So with the air supply off the truck, you'll easily hit 50 right away. So we'll turn the air on. Gonna have a guy back here running the compressor with a radio, guy at the end of the hose with a radio, and the guy at the end of the hose is actually gonna start right back here, and he's gonna follow that sponge along. What he'll do at the very start, he'll start at the end of the hose just to make sure the concrete is actually moving, and if you have a third guy handy to hang on to that hose while you're chasing the sponge, even better. But you can do this with just the 2 guys. 3 is better though. So the pump operator's back here with the radios controlling the air. Second guy starts following along here. And as he's following along, he's communicating with the operator who's running the air. And he's telling him how many hoses along you are. 1 hose in, 2 hoses in, 3 hoses in, 4 hoses in. As you get closer to the end, he'll start counting off how many hoses from the end of the run he's at. So 100 feet from the end, 75 feet from the end, 50 feet from the end, and so on and so forth. So with 275 feet of hose here, what we're going to want to do is, once we get to about 100 feet from the end, we're going to cut that 50 pounds of air probably down to about 35. We're going to use the minimum amount of air that we can while still keeping that sponge moving. That's the key here. Keep the concrete moving with as little air as possible, and yes, it will be slow. This is probably going to take 10 minutes to do this properly, but do not be in a hurry. Take your time. Do not be in a hurry with air, ever. So 275 of line out here, 100 feet from the end, we're down to about 35 pounds. You get 2 hoses from the end, you're going to cut that down to about 25. Our ultimate target here is to exit that sponge out of the last hose at between 5 and 10 psi of air. It takes time and it takes a little bit of finesse. Once again, do not be in a hurry. Once you get 2 hoses from then, you're probably going to cut things down to about 15 to 20 pounds. Once you get close to that last hose, you're going to be 5 to 10. What you'll find is, the closer you get to the end of the run, you've got all that stored energy behind the sponge pushing it. You can actually stop the compressor, and just from the stored energy, once that sponge starts to go, it starts to accelerate. And you have to be really quick on adjusting the air pressure and bleeding it down back at the compressor end of things. You'd be amazed. You get 300-400 feet of line out. By the time that sponge is 100 feet from the end, you got to react really quick to bleed that air down, because it just starts to accelerate at such a rapid rate, right? So if you have 400 feet of hose out and a larger diameter hose, you're probably going to start bleeding things down even 150 feet out. The more hose you have, the larger the diameter of the hose you're using, the further from the end of the run is when you have to start bleeding that air down, because you have so much stored energy. A 2-inch hose versus a 2.5 versus a 3-inch, doing the numbers in my head, a 2-inch line probably only has less than half of the actual area, the actual volume of a 3-inch hose, which means less than half of the stored energy. It's all about stored energy. You think about it, if you have a balloon and you pop a balloon and a balloon's inflated to 10 psi, no big deal. If you take a 100-gallon air tank and you have that at 20 psi and you pop it, huge explosion. Why? Stored energy. It's all about stored energy. So the more line you have, the more stored energy, the more careful you have to be, the more respectful that you have to be of things. The best way to do this, because we have the Milwaukee compressor, would actually be to push this hose, or this sponge, about 2 hoses from the end, bleed all the air off, break that compressor off, bring it down 2 hoses from the end, and finish it out just blowing the last 2 hoses out independently. The reason why, 2 hoses, not a lot of stored energy, way less potential for a catastrophic explosion at the end of the line. If you're using the truck's air system, you would need to have a couple 100 feet of air line to achieve this. So with the Milwaukee, it is very easy to do it that way. Today we're going to do it all in one run, just for illustrative purposes. We're not going to do the separate blowdown of the lines at the end there. So another option with the Milwaukee compressor, and this is probably a safer option, and if you're the only operator and there's no second operator, this is probably your only option. Pump your hopper down as low as you can, put the compressor at the end of the hose and the sponge in, put the pump slowly stroking in reverse, apply air pressure, push everything back into the hopper. Make sure your lid is down and secured, and yeah, just slowly stroke away in reverse. You can push that all the way back into the pump. With a standard line pump hopper, if you've pumped all the way down, you've probably got room to bring back at least 150 feet of 2.5-inch hose right into the hopper, and you won't be overflowing. 2-inch line, you probably take back 225, maybe 250 even. 3-inch line, probably only 100, 125 feet. But that is a very good option if you're rolling solo. So anyhow, we will check back in here when we're actually doing the blowout. But the thing I cannot emphasize enough is respect for the amount of stored energy in the hose. If you have 500 feet of 3-inch line out and you're going to try and blow it out with a compressor in one shot, your chances of doing so without having drama at the end of the hose are slim to none. So even today at 275 of 2.5, this is about the limit of what I would want to blow out in one shot. Anything more than this, and you're going to want to get the compressor, the little Milwaukee, take it to the end of the run, and finish it off independently. So that is the best, safest way to do it. But we'll go through this step by step once we actually get to blowing out here.
For this goal,
Okay, so when we get into this wall here, we're gonna stop. We're gonna slump up the mixer. There'll be lots of concrete in the lines in the hopper to top up this wall. And then we'll be into the wet stuff as we get to the second half of this footing here probably. Do not introduce a whole bunch of water into the hopper just before you pump down. The reason being, doing that, you can end up with a segregation plug in the hose. You go and put your air on the lines and crank it up to 80 psi and you've got a rock pack in the hose. Major problem. So if you're going to wet things up towards the end of the pour to blow the lines out, do it at the mixer and let that gradually introduce. Don't go back and rinse the sides in on your hopper and make a lake in there and then try and push it part way through and finish it with air. That is a bad situation. So just make sure that everything is a gradual, smooth transition, nothing abrupt. That is the key to blowing these lines out properly. Don't do anything drastic or abrupt. Smooth, steady, consistent. Okay, so Ian's gonna go back. We're at about a 110 slump right now, 110, 120. We're gonna take it to a 150. We don't wanna go too wet with this stuff. It's a little bit rocky. Once again, don't wanna get into segregation issues, so we're gonna make it just a little bit wetter and push it through the hose at a nice 150 slump. That's the plan here. Let's see what we got in the chute now, and then we'll see what we're gonna bring it up to, just so you get an idea. It's probably 110, 120. So juice this up a little bit. So that's a nice slump there. That's probably actually about a 170. So maybe a little wetter than what I would recommend, just considering the mix is a little bit rocky, but it'll be fine. So what we're gonna see here, we'll get this little short wall done. We'll get about halfway through the footing, and then you're gonna see the wet stuff come out the end of the hose. About halfway along the footing here. I'll check back in when that happens. When do you want to cut them off? When we get to about...
Here.
That early? Okay. You think your hopper's got that much?
Hopper plus line. What is that, like 0.37?
Yeah, if anything, take a bit extra.
Yeah.
We don't want to get into pumping the hopper right down and pushing a bunch of air into the system. Reason for that is if we have a bunch of air in the system already, once we put our sponge in and add our air compressor behind the sponge, you're not going to get a steady flow of concrete. You're going to get concrete with little air pockets spitting out, uncontrolled air pockets spitting out. So do not run your hopper down to the point where it's sucking air and pushing into the lines before breaking off to blow the lines out. That's a critical thing. We should see that wet stuff come through here pretty soon.
I can feel it. We got enough.
You want me to cut them off? Cut them off. This is the wet stuff. Perfect blowout slump.
Yeah. Okay, it's a beautiful Saturday.
We don't want to pull any air in the hopper, right?
No.
You think pretty good?
Oh yeah.
All right. Break her off, blow her out. We'll do it on the pool. We'll break it open on the pool. Or that piece of cardboard right there. That works. So what we're gonna do, because of where this reducer is and whatnot, we're actually gonna blow it out one hose into the system, and then when we're done, we'll just suck this one hose back rather than trying to break it there and get our gear all set up there and probably making a mess on the ground. So this is just easier. And then with the one hose here, if we need to cycle, if we were going to another job, we'd throw some delay set in, we could cycle it around through the one hose, it's all good. We don't have another job, so we'll just put the pump in reverse, we'll suck that one hose back, roll it into the pump. So, okay, here we go, buddy. Nice damp sponge, no water in front of it. We don't want any segregation. And a wrap of plastic. There we go. Oh, you got a rock in that clamp.
Okay.
You got a little rock in that clamp. There you go. All right. Tight, tight, tight. All right.
Everybody, you ready there? Okay. Oh, okay, I gotta put on my air.
So Chris is at the end of the hose. Ian's going to start the air. Chris will be at the end of the hose to make sure the concrete is moving.
Oh, I think it works.
Yep. Keep her around 50.
Yeah, boom it. I boom it.
And the way to tell where the sponge is you just walk along here and feel them. Feel the hoses. And this will take quite a while with this little compressor. It works hard to keep up. Okay, the sponge has just started moving. There we go. You can feel it moving along. We got lots of time here. I'm going to walk to the end and we'll just show you what the progress looks like at the end of the hose. Like I said, with this little compressor, this is probably going to be a 10-minute process done properly. So, as I mentioned before, as the hoses fill with air, displacing the concrete, the pace will pick up here.
We got it at 1:30 on Friday. Oh, yeah, really? Yeah, he was raging. He told us something. You were like laughing at that.
Okay, because I'm your third guy, I'll just kind of communicate with you and then you just tell Ian. Oh, little air pocket in there.
Got a little air there.
That's fine. That was just air that was in the system beforehand. Probably from just stopping and starting.
I'm still in the first hose. No. No, I think he knows that it's fun.
If it was just the two operators here, we would have either one of the guys on site holding the hose, or we'd just have the hose off to the side, and the second operator would monitor the line, and then eventually when the sponge does get close to the end, two hoses from the end, he would jump on the hose to control that and run the radio. Once the sponge is a couple hoses from the end, you pretty much are just telling the operator or the pump operator to keep the air down at about 10 psi. You're beyond the point of chasing the hose, or chasing the ball through the hose, I should say. But yeah, as you can see, slow process. We are only into the second hose now. But you're going to see here how much this the pace picks up here as these hoses fill with air. But I'll show you the little Milwaukee compressor here. It'll be fighting even to keep 30-40 pounds of air in these lines. See how we're at about 40 pounds and we got movement. We got what we want here. Which is a nice thing about that little compressor. It does not build air pressure fast enough, typically, to put things in a dangerous situation. There we go. Our sponge is right here. How's the flow?
No flow.
No flow?
No flow.
Slow flow? It's coming. I can feel it here.
Nothing coming out, eh? Nothing coming out either.
It's moving back here. I can feel it. It is coming. It'll get there.
Okay.
Yep.
I can hear it coming now, Ian. Yeah, we're just at the end of the second hose.
The way it's behaving, it's almost like the hopper might have taken a couple strokes and put some air in those lines.
Slow go, but safe.
Because
You're not gonna fly 10 feet.
on the flat like this, it should be a consistent flow. It shouldn't be like concrete, air, concrete. So I think we might have pulled a couple strokes of air in the hopper. It's all good.
It's better than the air getting shot back.
That's true. That's true. We can't say anything incriminating. This is going to be our instructional video, so it's the reference video. It's going to go perfect.
Yep. We're getting slow now, Ian. Okay.
Sometimes you'll get that. You'll get concrete, air, concrete when you're on a steep grade and the concrete is actually running ahead of the sponge. But on the flat like this is making me suspicious that there were a couple of strokes of air pulled into that hopper at some point. No big deal. Yeah, it's picking up now. Pace is picking up now. Oh, you get a leaking clamp? Yeah. Bugger. It's moving.
Still moving.
Yeah, it's going. It'll pick up. Check on our air pressure here. Yeah, we're still right where we want to be. Like I said, to do this safely is not a quick process, so kind of sucks. Got a little bit of a leak at this joint here, but
37 to go.
not too significant. Where are we at now?
I'm getting close to this 5th hose.
Excellent. So with how slowly this is moving, I think we'll start bleeding the air. Like we will go 2 hoses from the end. I was gonna say 3 from the end just because of how much line is out, but I think we'll we'll start cutting her back around 2 from the end. Yep. She's moving. Yep, yeah, no, it's nice and steady now.
I think it's starting to pick up.
Good, we're nice and steady now at least, eh?
Yeah, we're still getting a little air spots, I think.
Yeah, well, little spit, spit, spit. So when we break these hoses all off here, doing just the sponge, one sponge, no water. Everything is going to be clean except for the last 10 feet of the last hose where the sponge accelerates out of the hose. That will be dirty. That's the one that will need to be rinsed. Everything else, providing that the flanges on the hose ends are clean, can just be tossed back on the rig. So still got movement.
I feel like just because that's a leaky clamp,
Yeah, it doesn't help a little bit. I mean, this little compressor is really like,
we can move it.
it's great for 2-inch. It's okay for 2.5.
And then it's great for 3. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I think it's the reducer.
Well, the 3-inch, you don't have as much resistance in the line too, right?
No.
So, do you have a second battery or no?
Nope.
No? Oh boy.
We'll make it.
Hopefully we make it with one battery.
We'll have 1 bar left.
Cutting it close.
We only got like 100 feet left.
Yeah. Yeah, at 40 pounds, that's what it's still running as 40. It should pick up pretty good.
I put it where we put all the bedding.
We're 100 feet left.
107.
Hey Chris, just in case, can you point it closer to the wall just so we don't renovate the windows on any of the automobiles? Yeah. I'll try and get that, we'll get the loop out of it whenever it's tight like that. When the sponge comes through at the end, it tends to whip it. Is it setting up pretty good? Excellent. Yeah, perfect. The straighter we can have this at the end run here is the better. Minimizes any whippings. Well, just any snaking action of the hose when that air finally does come through. So, yeah, picking up now. You're pretty good at actually, and you're almost 3 hoses from the end. I want to rock it through in one shot just for videoing purposes, but I did mention the best way is to break the compressor off, do the last 2 hoses on their own.
Yeah, let's just give.
But what we're trying to illustrate here is finessing it.
Oh, we're not trying
The importance of finessing at the end.
Okay. Yeah, we got 2 bars left. We're good.
You got 2 bars left? Okay.
Just want to give Chris some more PTSD.
Hey Chris, can you hold the hose end out of the pile just so she can flow? Yeah, thank you. It's one thing with the end of the hose in a pile like that. Causes enough back pressure that it'll really slow things down. Okay, now we're picking up pace. You want to go back and get on the bleeder valve? Take it down to 20. You might want to run.
Are we just gonna blow it right out?
We are. When we get about 3 hoses from the end, I'll yell to you, you yell to him to dial it down a bit. Just tell him to keep it full tilt for now.
Just keep it going.
I have the air off right now.
Keep that air off.
Tell him to keep it going for now. We're still in this.
Still got 3 lines.
Yeah.
Keep the air going.
Let's see where we are. We're getting close here. Yep. Okay, now we are. Okay, maybe now, Chris, tell him to take it down to about 20.
Please put the PSI down to 20 on the air.
Bringing it down.
And hold her there. We're getting close to this second to last hose. If you can just hold that out of the concrete just so it can flow. Okay, now tell them to take it down to 10.
10 psi in the air, please.
Hey guys, watch out just for a sec. Yeah. It's almost there. And we should have hard hats and safety glasses on.
Yes.
We forgot. But we definitely should. He's at 15?
You're at 15 psi or 10? 15,
I can drop it down.
No, 15's good. 15's good.
15 is okay.
Still got movement?
Not much.
We don't want much. That's perfect.
We're in the last like 25 feet.
Tell him to give it a little bit of air.
You can give it a little bit of air, please.
Bringing it up to 20.
Okay.
Okay.
Take it. Actually, you know what? No, we'll keep going. And take it to 10. Take it to 10.
10 psi. 10 psi.
Bleed it. Bleed it. Just tell him to bleed it.
Bring it down to 10.
Oh.
Nice.
Good. That was pretty good.
Yep.
You know what the worst part is? I wasn't even pointing the camera at it when it came out.
So, like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe.
Yeah, okay. I like that. Okay, so as I was saying, see how clean the hose is here? No need for any rinsing. But you'll see this last hose, the last 10 feet is always pretty creamy as that sponge accelerates and fires out. So, and just like that, we're done. Okay, so that's a wrap. And that is honestly about as good as any 200 plus foot line blow can go. That went really, really well. A shame that I turned the camera away in the last moments there in the heat of the battle. But yeah, so the most critical thing when that hose or that sponge gets within a couple hoses of the end, things start happening at a very rapid pace. So you got to be on it, and you got to be on the radio. Only 2 guys on radios. We've had jobs before where we've had 3 radios and one guy talks over the other guy and the signal to dump the air is not conveyed and bad things happen. So only 2 radios going, and just be on top of it. Do not be in a hurry. One thing we did wrong there, 100% the guy on the end should have a hard hat and most definitely safety glasses on. That was overlooked. That was wrong, but that's a major thing that should be happening. The other thing is single-ended hose on the end when you're blowing out. You blow through a double, and if that gets wild, that will literally kill someone. So blow it out through a single-ended rubber, unless you're blowing out into a blowout box or a proper apparatus. Always a single-ended hose. So anyhow, that'll be it for this video. Like I said, the only way that could have been even less dramatic is if we had broken off, moved the little compressor down 1 or 2 hoses from the end and pushed it out that way. And even at that, we couldn't get much better than what we had here. This was almost the perfect example. So, excellent.